Hello and welcome to the Deep Dive. It is so good to see you and to be back with you. We missed a week, of which we are very sad about, but we are back in action and we're so excited. Timna, Tia, and how are you guys?
Good.
Very well, as always. No,
Starting to get cooler now, guys. I'm seeing the jerseys and the hoodies come out.
No, I don't like it.
Are you a summer?
Yes, I'm a summer person.
I love winter.
I'm a winter man.
Winter
I was
man?
born in winter. I'll stay in winter.
Same.
Yeah.
When were you born?
December.
Oh, that's summer, dude.
That's
That makes
summer,
all
that's
the
why. There we go.
No, I like, there's just something, I just hate getting hot. And I think
Yeah.
because I run hot so easily, like
Yeah,
as a person,
sure.
in summer, like if it's hot, I'm just sweating like all the time.
And when you sweat when you preach.
Sweat
it's
when I
like,
preach,
oh,
sweat when I
that
eat,
sweat cloth comes out.
sweat when I do everything. So I'm just over that. But when it's like 17 degrees outside, then hey, no more sweat. And you can wear nice clothes.
That's true.
The winter clothes are,
They
we
are.
got it, Timmy, you have to admit, winter clothes, they're trendy.
Yep.
Yeah.
You like your summer clothes?
Yeah, I'm a summer person all the way. Like, you can't convince me.
Can't convince you.
I'm all for like a good staying in bed, movie day type of thing.
Okay.
But I'm happy.
Push
in
comes to
summer.
shove, you're a summer girl.
Uh-huh.
Okay, well, we're not going to try to convince you
There's
otherwise.
space for people like that in the kingdom of God.
You know, there's
space.
there's space for growth.
For growth.
So I think some of that can just take steps of growth. And I'm kidding. No.
It's okay. Maybe you never know. It might change. one day.
Very happy with you being a summer person. Don't worry about it. And good to have everybody join us today. And so excited for this conversation. We obviously had a really cool Sunday in church.
Yeah.
And really what these conversations are all about, if anybody's new here, the Deep Dive is a podcast conversation where we just, it's really for us, we have a great chat, but for anybody listening, and we think there's great value to be able to have a conversation about the sermon on a Sunday and maybe look at things from a slightly different perspective, a different angle. Because how often is it that, you hear something on a Sunday, you remember how good it was, but you can't remember the actual details.
Yep.
And the power of the sermons on Sunday is not really just in being inspired and encouraged on the Sunday, but the application power that it can have in our lives. So the Deep Dive conversation and podcast is just about exactly that, having more conversations about Sunday, enlightening ourselves and our listeners, really so that we can draw some of the goodness and the power from these messages. And this Sunday was indeed good and powerful. We had a guest speaker with us, Pastor John Van Caldy, who's not actually serving as a pastor right now. He pastored a church for about 30 plus years, a great church in Australia, I believe in Perth. That's where he's from. So I think the church was also in Perth. But for the last, I believe it's 12 to 15 years, he has been working as a church consultant, traveling all around the world, helping pastors really anywhere. I asked him a few questions about his travels, and it really sounds like he has indeed been everywhere. He said his favorite city was Vancouver. He enjoyed Vancouver, so shout out those guys. He said Cape Town was great as well, and he was in Vienna in Austria. Said that was awesome as well. So this is a guy who's been traveling a lot, but really the wisdom that he's got, not just in preaching and leading a church, but helping other ministers, and the heart that he has for the church all around the world was inspiring. And it was great to have him with us. So he took some time and he did a workshop both in Joburg and in Cape Town, helping South African pastors and churches. And then we had the honor of having him preach at our church on Sunday. He did a great job and brought a fantastic message on serving. And I know that there are some great highlights and things that have stood out really to all of us. So maybe we can start with some of the things that stood out to us, and then I'd love to have a few conversations with you guys just about serving and your experiences. And Timmy, maybe we'll start with you. What were some of the things that kind of like, ooh, that was good?
Well, the one thing was definitely how he highlighted and like just painted that picture of like we all have a space that only we can fill, that God has called us to, and it is in that space that we bless people. And it's and like
Sure.
we know like our purpose is our primary purpose is like serve God, to serve people, to lift his name and exalt his name. So it's stepping into a place, your unique spot that God has set out for you. It's like fulfilling your purpose, fulfilling that like blessing people and serving people. And
Very good. Love that. Yeah, that was awesome.
Sure. That's good. I mean, that the fact that like the first foundation of serving is actually that God chose you, I think was a really big and strong point that he made, because it's easy to make it about what we're feeling, about, we want to be a help, we want for even just our own gratification, self-gratification. Serving has its own perks in that, but it's actually a very humbling ministry, and the fact that God chose us is already enough reason to obviously enter into serving, but also to remain in it, because it was basically how he was expressing it, is that it keeps you grounded in that.
Yeah.
It keeps you grounded without, one day you feel like it, one day you don't. No,
Yeah.
God chose you for that. And he's got a specific purpose in mind, the one that only you can fulfill, which is what Timmy was saying now. So that's really very, very powerful stuff.
Yeah. So John took, it was Joshua 24, and he basically unpacked this passage, which was so interesting. Hey, like how he almost showed us how Joshua was moving through God's plan, up until that point, through the book of Genesis, then Exodus, skipped Leviticus, then got back to Numbers, and was showing us kind of how what God had done in the past almost prepares us for what we can do and be a part of today in God's plan, and how that should set the foundation, firstly for our identity, and then namely our purpose. But serving is one of those interesting things where we can often bring in kind of our 21st century mindset and perspective into things, and to be like, why should I do this? What role does it play? Like, I'm tired, I'm busy enough in the week. But I think it's when we only view serving as almost like a means to an end, like, oh, the church needs this, so I'm okay, fine, I'll do that. I'll make the coffee. But as soon as it doesn't kind of suit me anymore, or John made a joke about, serving in December is one thing, serving in July is another thing. When the sun's only coming up at like 7:30, it's ice cold, you get to church, and it's like, that's when kind of the heart motive get tested. And then it's actually not surprising, that some people will kind of fall away. But I think that's why it was so inspiring and encouraging to hear we've actually got to take things back, because we serve out of a place of revelation. We serve out of a place of what God has already done, what God has already prepared, how God has positioned us to be a part of what he's doing. Serving is not our little contribution to the church. Serving is a response. It's an action out of complete gratitude, that like, geez, God did all of these things. What role do I play? Like, what has God given me? What gifts, talents, and abilities? What can I bring? Even if it's just a great attitude, what can I bring that can move this thing forward and move? If it's your church, if it's your organization, serving is a huge part of what God has put us on earth to do. But to almost understand that, that's why I found the message so encouraging. I'd love to ask you guys, like, what were your early experiences with serving? Just serving in church, or talking about serving. Like, what was that like for you? Did you get into it, or like, what was the deal?
Okay, well, first, before I go into how I started serving, I liked what you said there, like what John said as well, like the foundations crumble when it's like, it's you seeking, like when it's based on satisfaction.
Can't get no satisfaction. I think that's what you're looking for.
And like approval from others, or like acknowledgement from others, like
status, applause, popularity, like
things, then like when the wintry season comes, that's when you like when you know where your foundation's at, because like it will crumble if it's all of those things. But if it's rooted in like it's like, because we are grateful to what God's done for us, then it like can stand firm even in the wintry seasons.
Very good.
But anyway, I started out serving in kids' church for the first time.
Okay, how old were you?
I was in grade 5.
Wow.
I think grade 4, grade 5.
So what's that, 10, 11 years old?
Yes.
Wow.
So it was I was like a rising star, and then I became like a junior leader, and then I became a leader. But I did that for a couple years, and then I think I didn't have like a relationship with God for myself yet. So I wasn't serving out of like I was kind of serving out of like myself, being dependent on myself, my own strength. There was no like it wasn't stemmed out of anything. It was more like, oh, my parents served here, or my mom served there, so I'll give it a go. And over time, like I also fell a bit away from like church and the whole thing, and then I also stepped back from serving then, and then it was when I did form a relationship with God for myself that wasn't just my parents' faith. That's when I was able to step into serving again. And but it like I first had to make sure that like I was had a connection with God again, and I was one with Him again, and then slowly but surely first it started with signs, then it started helping out here and there, checking Frontline out of
What happened to that science team? Are they still going?
I shouldn't have brought up. Yes,
Timmy. We have to resurrect the science team, especially in winter.
That's it.
Oh,
New serving opportunity.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep. Okay.
Sorry, that just came to mind. Okay, good. Tian, and for you, man?
For me, it was very much. I mean, look, I'm very seasoned when it comes to seasons because
seasoned.
Yes,
when it comes to seasons,
because I've been in the highs, been in the lows many times. I haven't stepped out, but I started production. I'm still in production. I think 10 years later, 12 years, roughly 12 years from now.
Wow.
But in the beginning, it was very much necessity focused. It was my parents kind of pushed me in there. They were like, "Hey, there's tech stuff. Go do that because you're a techie guy."
Yeah.
And it actually, like, I was so into it from the start, but it wasn't very much for me. I wasn't really focusing on the spiritual aspect. It was just, I'm part of this church. I'm in my parents' church, so I might as well just do stuff with what I have and all that. So I was very insecure, but it actually grew me so much because I started to learn that the hard way that you will face opposition when you're taking ground in God's kingdom, you know. My parents warned me about that. They said, there will be times you're going to face a lot of opposition, but the Lord blesses those who, persevere through that and who actually serve consistently. And so I held that a lot. I mean, there were many times that I would feel very discouraged about serving in general. I would maybe make a lot of mistakes in a short amount of time and think, okay, well, clearly I'm not built for this or anything, And pushing through those seasons, there's always been blessing after blessing. So I would say that's really a testimony even in of itself, is that the Lord helped me to stay consistent and not actually act on finding a way out, but actually just staying through it and relying on Him every single time. I mean, that's the most important thing. So, I think I could truly say that I found that place that He purposed for me, and that's already a huge blessing in life. It gives you a sense of purpose,
Yeah.
And I think serving is one of the greatest ways to achieve that, to live in the fullness of God. Actually.
Yeah, I'd love to find out from you guys, whereas you both have taken, a step up this year in terms of, I would say, a pretty big step in terms of involvement this year, being a part of our church team, now serving as kind of almost like your job in a sense. I'd love to hear, like, obviously, I think like anything in life, when you take a step and you stretch your capacity, it can be challenging. There can be seasons where you're feeling drained or you're feeling, this is difficult. But I'd love to hear from you guys, maybe in these 5 months so far that we've been doing this. Have you guys experienced, like, what is the experience of that increased involvement in serving and being involved in different areas? What has that been like? And maybe where have you seen almost the goodness of God come through in a season that has been very different?
I can just say that, like, even there have been times where it's been like tough or like you maybe feel a bit more tired, but the like Tian said, like pushing through it, the blessings are so much bigger and greater. Like, I've already learned so much, I've experienced so much, I've seen things I didn't think I would see. I've like gone to like I feel like I've gotten to know God like on new levels that I never thought I could. So I think it's definitely been a growing season. I've definitely, like, I look back now and I'm like, ooh, there's a lot of lessons that I've learned and that I'm going to learn, and that's okay. Like, it's all, I really feel like as much as I maybe have like given, I've been given so much more, like, through it all. Just so, like, even when it does get tougher, I know, like, okay, no, I'm meant to be here. Even if it's tough, like, this is where I know I'm meant to be here. This is where I'm meant to be. This is I'm grateful to be here. Like it's all worth it. It's,
That's
sure.
awesome. Love that.
Wow, that's so good. I think reflecting on what you're saying there, it's that idea that you can't outgive God,
Yeah,
because He's always going
good.
to give more back. He's always
Yeah.
going to, whatever you use, whatever you surrender to Him, finances even is an example. You give that to Him, you still will find yourself living in a fullness of and having enough and even more than enough. And I think it's just the same thing with serving, where the more you are pouring out, the more He's also going to pour into you. You just need to obviously receive. And that's one of my bigger things this year has been, I need to learn to receive as effectively as I am pouring out, because without that, I'm going to be burning out, because I'm going to be exhausting my own resources that are very limited as a human. And I think that's where that I've really seen the blessing of God, in the sense of that whenever I do reach out to Him desperately, for energy, for capacity and things, He will always provide it, and always has and always does. And I think that it's incredible to have the opportunity to pour out more than I had been in the other years, because pouring out has always been a blessing in and of itself. It's better to give than to receive, kind of thing. And so it seems very upside down to someone entering it foreignly.
Totally.
You're like, that doesn't sound right. That me giving
Because the
more of
world's
myself.
culture is like, I like give to me. If I give to you, who's going to take care of me? So we
That's
have to
it.
make sure like I'm always fine, I'm always okay. But then God invites you on this journey of faith, and it's
Yeah.
like, well, if you'd allow me to lead you as my hands and feet, like you go practically, you show and you be the love of God to people.
Yeah.
Have faith in me to fill every need and to cover every gap.
Sure.
And whereas that first step of faith can feel like out there and maybe even difficult, what a greater life it is to live a life where it's like, I'm actually not responsible to look after everything in my life. And serving is just an example of that, where God says, hey, if you would bring your gifts, your ability, your personality, and would you serve other people that are maybe trying faith out, looking to learn, looking to grow, seeking God, maybe in a very difficult position in life, if you would come and you would just demonstrate, because that's how God does it. He uses people to demonstrate the love of God and the love of Jesus. If you'd be a part of that in changing those lives, I can only imagine that God would want to bless and bring favor and take care of us in the way that He sees fit, and that blesses us. And for me, I'm like, you know what, that just seems like a more attractive thing to be a part of. I can spend the rest of my 70 or 75, 80 years by God's grace making sure I'm okay. It just feels like a small life and a small world. And I'm just every year is just, okay, do we have enough? But it's like, God says, hey, well, why don't you live a big life? Why don't you give of yourself and give of your gift, give of your personalities, and don't worry for a second about your life. I've got that covered. I'd rather have a God who owns cattle on 1,000 hills in control of my life and my family and those types of things, and me trying to do things in my very limited ability. Serving, I think, is like a practical thing, and a practical way that we can say, God, you know what? I trust you to look after the things. As I serve and give and pour into the church and into people, I trust you to take care of the rest, which is like it's empowering. But I love what you said there. It is so counterculture.
Yeah.
It's like serving in general. It's like if you serve, normally that is someone in a lesser position, someone who hasn't been successful in life, or has got the degrees or flies first class. But then Jesus completely changes everything and says, for those of you who want to be first, must be last.
Sure.
And then He teaches them at the Last Supper, where He kind of stands up from the table and takes his robe off and starts to wash feet. And He says, as Lord, as teacher, I wash feet, I serve. So He used His position. So there could be people listening here, business owners and big positions in the world's eyes. Jesus says, I use my position as Messiah, Son of God, to wash your feet. Now go and do the same. So we're not here like, okay, cool, I'll serve when I'm young or when I'm don't have a lot, but then when I have a lot, that changes. No, God says, use your position to serve, to love, be an example, be a demonstration. Christ did that His whole life, and that's the blueprint. And serving just comes in. It's like, oh, great. This is my moment to do that.
That's the whole thing that encourages me as well, is that, those who humble themselves will be exalted, as it says so much in the Word. There's so many...
And if you exalt yourself, you will be
humbled. Exactly. It goes both ways, right? So whatever we're trying to do in this world to boost our own image is actually going to really, it's going to do the exact opposite.
A bit of a waste of time. You know what I
is.
mean? A bit of a waste of time. It's like, who are we doing that for?
Yeah.
Exalt yourself for what? Your Instagram followers, It's like, nah, let's just let's let God handle that.
Yeah.
And let's be humble. Let's love people. The time on earth, as much as we think 70, if you get that much, it's quick, it's fleeting, it's like a mist. Let's be a part of something bigger, something more significant, something that's eternal than just making yourself look good. Because I can tell you that once you pass away, people have to move on with their lives and they'll forget. But you can leave a legacy by serving people.
That's good.
That's how legacies work. Legacies don't work by someone who's just is involved and just make sure they're okay. Legacies are built on what you do for others, how it impacts others. Bad legacies are built by how other people were impacted. We know lots of stories like that. Good legacies are also built, again, by how we positively impact and love other people. Maybe just a last question. I think a big thing about what John was saying this weekend was attitude and serving out of a place of gratefulness. But I think we all know that there can be moments where you're a bit tired and things can get hectic and it's like, oh, the church is just using me, or Phil's just using me, or Tiandros doesn't give me a break in this production team. He just rosters me all the time. And you can get into these moments where you've got a bit of a heart tension. What would you guys say? Maybe just one thing. Like, how would you guys say is a great way to keep yourself focused on why we serve, the what behind, so that we can almost keep ourselves in the right space, in that grateful attitude space when serving?
Sure. I mean, one thing that reminds me of from the sermon is actually that he said to, let go of the things that you are treating as gods, essentially, and to yield your heart to the Lord. So yielding your heart means actually, saying, Lord, here it is. I've surrendered it all. When you're struggling with these feelings of being used or being even used and abused kind of thing, that is very much a place where your heart is becoming hardened. So we need to yield it all the more to Him. And actually, as you were saying earlier, you're living in faith by serving others. In the meantime, trusting God that He will look after you. And that's the whole thing: is He will look after us. He will help us not to be overburdened, because he won't give us more than we can bear. And so we have to really trust Him in those seasons and actually just push through. And there are times we need to voice ourselves and look after ourselves as He wants us to look after our bodies that are temples of the Holy Spirit. But oftentimes we actually need to really be humbled, in the sense we remind ourselves the heart of it. Why am I doing this? It's because I'm serving God. I'm not serving man. And that involves working with man to build the kingdom of God. So
exactly. And we're not advocating this like unhealthy serve every weekend, every evening, have no time for your work and family, and definitely not. Like that's definitely not it. So it's not about, hey, serve or you're in a bad space. But I think it is just, you can understand where your heart is at sometimes in those moments where every 2 weeks or 3 weeks that you're rostered, kind of where you're at. I mean, I don't know if you had anything there.
Yeah, I think it's good. Like, I just find it cool that even though when we serve, we're serving God, like He's still helping us through it. And like we don't have to rely on our own strength. And also then just like reaffirming your foundations, like renewing your foundations, making sure that you're not serving out of a place of like self-satisfaction.
Self-gratification, I would say.
Or like acknowledgement from others. Like if your foundations are in, like, if your heart is positioned in like, I'm serving because I love you because of what you've done for me. I think it's a lot easier and a lot. It's just, it guards your heart. It guards your heart. Like it's designed. We're designed to serve this way, like to guard our heart from like the world, in a sense. And I just find like when it does get tough or you are battling with feelings like that, I find it helps to reaffirm like truth by like making sure you're having time in the Word, having time in prayer, filling your cup with God and like with the Holy Spirit. It's not always easy, but I find that like when we do go to God with these like it's natural to sometimes have these feelings, but when we go to God and allow Him to speak into our lives and allow Him to speak truth over us, it's just brings like a refreshment and like a refueling you to keep going and to keep doing it.
Very good. That's cool. Awesome, guys. Sure. But it's been a great chat. And we really hope that anybody who's joined us today and has watched has been encouraged. If you haven't seen the message yet, go and check it out. It was super helpful. And I think a message that we all need to hear, I think maybe once a year, because this isn't something that you're like, okay, I've heard it and now I know it. We'll go through seasons as people where things are easier, things are harder. But to be reminded of the heart of what we do in serving people was excellent. So we encourage you, haven't seen it, it's up on Revive TV YouTube channel. But if you've got this far, you're probably already loaded and ready to smash that message anyway. But thank you guys. Today was awesome. Until next time.
Yes.
Yeah. Next week this time.
Yeah. We hope. So good. Well, hey, we'll see you soon. Thank you for joining. Cheers.